Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Just Deal with It, where Tamara and I talk about things that we have to deal with. And today I'm really excited about the topic that we have because, Tamara, I don't know about you, but for me, I have a lot of patients that go, "Oh my God, I wish I never." Um, the things that I knew now that I didn't know then is our topic for today. Yeah, so I'm excited to talk about that. What are your thoughts?
My thoughts are, oh my God, like you could go on with this for hours, for days about the things that I wish I knew back then, what I know now, right? Like relationships that you entered into, how things started. Like, because obviously we're all very innocent in the beginning because if you don't have experience and you're entering something and this is a new step in some kind of a direction, you're not gonna know what certain actions mean. You're going to take them differently because
Yeah.
you don't know what to expect, right? And then looking back, you kind of like, I was so stupid. you know, what was I thinking? How naive was I? He literally told me exactly who he was from day one, right? Or the situation, that friend that you became friends with at some point or whatnot. They literally taught you and showed you who they really were because I'm going to give a good example. Hopefully, we're actually going to cover this topic. It's in regards to just toxic relationships, toxic work
Mhm.
environments, and that, and how to really conduct yourself around people, especially in the new work environment. Like, you don't really know. People want to try, especially with office politics, right? People want to get to know, they want to get the dirt, they want to know what's going on with you, who you are, who you're with, who you're not with, all this other stuff. And, just certain things I wish I knew because, for example, my career, I this was like my first long-term relationship, this job, right? Because I've been with child services for over 10 years. And entering it, I did not know what
Yeah.
kind of a pond I was going into. It's office politics. So,
But not just office politics, because
mhm,
I've known you for years, and the things I have heard you deal with, like
yeah.
I deal with that. So it's not even just the office politics, but the toxicity of the situations.
It's like, sometimes you go into something and you already know that it's going to be tough. Dealing with people is never easy. Working with people, if you don't love people,
Yeah.
don't work in a field where you have to work with them because it's just gonna
Especially those.
you're gonna suck everyone dry and they're gonna suck you dry, and then in the end you're just gonna be an empty shell. But going into certain environments, like let's say now, compared to where I was 11 years ago when I just started there, I'm a very different person. I'm very secretive. I'm really personal. I don't talk about very important things because they could be played with or jeopardized or used against me. But this is stuff that I know now that I didn't know before because there I came in like an open book.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Tamara. I do this. I don't like this. I like this. Oh, you don't like that? Okay, we'll make sure you get that. No problem. Oh, so nice to meet you, by the way. Right?
Yeah.
So this is stuff that you learn over years, wisdom, meeting the right people that kind of teach you lessons, meeting the wrong people that teach you lessons.
Yeah.
um, yeah, like I said, I could go on forever, but I'd like to start with something that you can go back on and talk about right now. What do you think you would do differently?
Oh God. So going back a little bit on what you were saying on how we have to learn. Even when people tell us, like, let's face it, our mothers have said, you shouldn't do this, you shouldn't date him, or whatever it may be, right? And even then, when people are telling us because they've had the experience, they've seen it, we still think, no, but I'm different,
Mhm.
right? No, it's not me. No, you don't know him. You don't know her. And so I think that what I knew now compared to what I knew then, I think anyone has to firsthand learn it. For example, I was listening to this podcast with Trevor Noah, which I think everyone should listen to. I think it's called like Anxiety Generation with a psychologist, Jonathan Haidt. And let me tell you, they were talking about how kids need to fall. They need to feel like, like the playgrounds are now rubber. And they were talking about how they should still be, that hard concrete, whatever,
Cement. Mhm.
because you have to learn the pain. If you're on the monkey bars, you need to be able to fall. And us as parents, we become so protective that we don't want our kids to fail. But I think that having to have firsthand knowledge and experience on feeling that pain, feeling the heartache, feeling whatever it may be, and going, oh, my mom warned me, my friend warned me. I think that's what brings us to, gosh, I wish I had known that then. But there's no way we can absorb that at this age. We have to experience it. So for me, to answer your question, man, my first marriage. Man, I mean, no, I want to be faithful. No, I want to, I want to be that one supportive person. No. And man, I mean, the amount of pain that has come out of that, but also the amount of success. So that's the thing that I think most people listening to this podcast would probably relate to a relationship. What I knew then was I wanted, naive, obviously. I want to be supportive and hear that person was like, oh, no one's ever been supportive or seen me for who I am, blah, 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 blah. And, those around me saw it. Had I not gone through the pain, I mean, we wouldn't have met actually.
Yeah.
We both got our masters in social work later in life. And I think it's because we learned through experiences, through pain, that now we can go, oh, and we can give that information to our podcast listeners and to our patients and to our friends and family.
Mhm.
Not that they're going to listen because
Yeah.
we have to go through experiences, but then that brings us into healthier relationships like you and I have now. So we have to go through the pain.
Yeah, absolutely. I do think that there's some experiences like you come to a crossroads in life sometimes where you have to make one decision, right? And you have to make that decision uh, right away. And it has to be, it's an extreme change. And a lot of people will fall back and say, I'm not ready. And then life goes on. Then you go back and you're like, well, what if I took that route? What if I took the road unknown or something along the lines? And it kind of, uh, I guess it just changes the perspective of what extreme is,
Can you
right?
give
Or
me an example? Give me an
well,
example.
I'm gonna give an example, but I actually, for me, it was professional, obviously. You know, it's interesting that you bring up the social work piece, like our school and stuff. Like for me, I actually, when I started school and I started going and I started actually sitting in those classrooms right before COVID hit, of course, then we had to go back inside. Um, you know, I kept thinking to myself, as far as just like, why didn't I do this sooner? What
Mm-hmm.
was I doing? Like, this is where I'm supposed to be. I'm supposed to be in this field. I'm supposed to do this. I'm meant to be in this position, going, having an impact on more and more people as I grow. But just why wasn't I ready for this back then? And it kind of brings me back to the decision making piece, right? So, my whole story with how I ended up in the social work is I used to work IT. I used to work in a very big IT company, was doing very, very well there. And like I finished college. I went to Pace University. I finished for psychology. My master was in applied psych and human relations, right?
So
And
you
the
live in this then, yet you were in IT.
Yeah, so basically what happened was I came out of school fresh out back then, okay, I'm ancient, so we all know that. Back then, I guess the field of social work and just interpersonal anything was it wasn't as developed. Like back then, IT was the thing.
Right.
Computer programmers, they were shooting them out like freaking hotcakes, and they were all getting these great jobs. And here I am, my friend went to law school, had a bunch of loans, couldn't find a job as an attorney, like a normal job where they weren't being paid pennies or whatever. It was just such a strange time at that point, and I just saw this ad. I came in, it was a big company. First they hired me to do like sales for them. this is fresh out of college. Like I said, it's the first year fresh out of college.
Yeah.
And they really liked me. And they were like, you know what? We're going to pay for the courses. You should do some quality assurance for us. And it's just like changed my whole life. You know, I was able to purchase my own home. I was able to do a lot of the things that I wasn't able to do prior to that, you know?
Right.
And of course, the market crashed and all this other stuff happened. But the interesting piece is right before I got into the social work field, I found this really great job. And
In IT?
no, it wasn't an IT because the market crashed. The IT just my job went to three people in India. My whole position was we were they started I mean they started sending the job to India basically because it was much
Yeah.
cheaper at that point. It was like, you know, three people were getting my one salary. So you could imagine. And I got this job in in a lab. And I was a director of their PR. I was basically working with all these different nursing homes and whatnot, checking in on the phlebotomist, just working with elder people, which was like really like hurting me because watching elder abuse is
Mm.
but again, you know, it was pretty prestigious. It was a really pretty good job. Um, then all of a sudden, I get a call from the city saying that I took an exam prior to finding this job. I took an exam and I guess, the line was coming to my number. So they were like, we would like you to come in for an interview. I went in, Child Protective Services, you know, and it was just an emotional turmoil just deciding to do this, right? And it was something inside of me that kept saying, you have to do this. This is for you. This is something you have to do. Again, I didn't know what I was even signing up for. I didn't even know what this was going to look like, that I was going to go into these people's homes, that I was going to assess if the family is abusing the children, that I would have to do removals, that I would have to be part of some cases were media cases where there was murder, there was like, and obviously
Yeah.
everybody has kids at the end of the day, and where do those kids go? We don't see it on TV. We don't know what's going on in the news, but CPS is in the background making sure those kids are safe, right? So I didn't think
You
about those things.
went from like elder abuse to child abuse,
Yeah,
basically.
yeah, it was just a huge dynamic change, right? And I just something inside of me just said, you have to go for this. This is for you, right? Even though here I have a pretty cushiony spot. You know, I come home.
Work?
I'm sorry?
Is this what led you to social work?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
So I basically I went for this job. I went to the training. I started in the field. I started work like every night the first year I was doing the job, cried every freaking night to sleep. First, I would come home at like 2, 3 a.m., right? Sometimes when I would be
Yeah.
removing these kids. And I kept saying, oh my God, if I knew then what I know now, I would have never. I would have never done this. Now I don't have that position because that ship has sailed. And here I'm kind of stuck at that point. So then several months later, I turn on the TV. I'm not gonna say any names because it's
Hmm.
I turn on the TV and my lab is on the news. And it turns out that there was some stuff going on that was under the book. I mean, whatever.
Mm.
It was not legal stuff. Let's just say that. I didn't know about it. I had no idea they were even doing this. But the thing is, everyone that worked at that lab went to jail. Okay?
So check this out. You said something that I want to touch upon.
Yeah.
What I know now, that I didn't know then. Okay.
Mhm.
This is something I talk to my patients a lot about. Your gut instinct.
Yep.
You like, I have to take this. I don't
Yep.
know why, but I have to take this.
Yep. And
And
I regretted it. Oh my God. Every 3 a.m. call, I regret it. I regret it. But then when I turn
yeah,
on that
look
news,
at what happened, right?
I turned on the news and I just saw this man and I was just like, I couldn't breathe. Like I called people that I knew that were affiliated with that office. I'm like, what the hell happened? They're like, listen,
Yeah.
you know, it's just being in a space like that and not knowing what's going on behind closed doors, just kind of being their show monkey and then taking a hit for somebody because,
I
you
know.
know, so
I mean, that's kind of what I feel happened with my marriage.
mhm,
Um, I mean, it turned out to be that like my signature was forged, and I got in. My name was ruined, my reputation. It was just this, and here I am. Like, what is going on, right? Like, I chose this marriage, and who would ever think that your spouse would do anything like that?
never could.
But no, you would never. So so what you're saying is like in the job force, even relationships, it's like this whole like I would have never imagined this toxicity, this maliciousness, and all that. But I feel like you and I took, see, I don't think people, I don't, and people will probably disagree with me. I really feel that if you're going to be a psychotherapist, you really need the experience, like actual life experience, not book learned experience, to be able to be like, I totally connect with this patient, or I understand what you mean, or, to really show that empathy and that passion, and to really present that as a therapist to your patient. And so for you and I, with the experiences that we've had, we're able to be like, yeah, get it. Versus,
You know,
sorry, I mean, no insult to anyone, but versus a 20-year-old, right? That really hasn't had that life experience. And so, again, I go back to the point of that, like, we have to listen to our gut because it
mhm,
leads somewhere. I mean, again, my divorce and everything I went through, living in the shelters, doing my master's, starting my master's in the shelters with no internet and all that. I mean, it drove me more to be a more passionate. I mean, we were both at the UN,
yep, yep,
and because we had that drive, that passion to make a difference in this world. And so, I always tell my patients, if you were supposed to, you would have.
yep.
Because I think that the paths that we're taking, I think it leads us to the people that we're supposed to be. If we're
Sure.
willing to be courageous enough.
Yeah, absolutely. But like, I have a question. So
You
let's say
got there.
so let's say I agree with you, but I have a question. So like let's say you can go backwards and you
Yeah.
can jump into a time machine right now and find Shanae 20 years ago. What would you tell her?
Really good question. I love this question because part of me would say, like, oh my God, well, I would for sure say don't marry so and so, but then I wouldn't have my amazing kids. And honestly, I don't think I would be here right now doing what I'm doing had I not gone through that. So I think what I would tell Shanae 20 years ago would be, just really trust your gut and have the courage to say no. It's okay to like end the relationship when it doesn't feel right to you.
Yeah.
And, don't worry about, you don't want to hurt the other person, but you really have to be able to be like, listen, this isn't right for me. That is something that I do wish in the past that I would have done because I was such a people pleaser. So the one thing I think I would say is like I wish I was less of a people pleaser because I was trying to please everybody, my mom, family members. I mean, people like labeled me as like, oh, Shanae, you're so this and you're so that. And I was like, oh, well, that's what they told me I am. So therefore I am. So that's one thing that I don't know that I would change my experiences because they created the person that I am today. I do wish that I was not a people pleaser. And I don't think that would have changed who I was necessarily. If anything, I think it would have made me stronger, faster.
Yeah.
What about you?
For me, I think I would just tell myself to spend more time with my mom, with my family, and to get out of certain relationships a little bit earlier. Not to give my whole heart to certain people and to buy an apartment in Florida. Yeah, I think that would have been something I would have told myself in advance because, the prices are insane right now. Um, but yeah, and definitely invest in the stock market. And, just not to be so tough on myself because I don't know what happened in the past. I'm gonna say 5 years, maybe. No, no, no. Past 5 years, I would say. Yeah. I've had such a hard time crying in my whole life. Like,
Well, and I'm going to interrupt you for a second
mhm,
because we've always agreed on our podcast real.
Yeah.
And I'm so glad that you said I've always had a hard time crying because I see you getting emotional right now. Is that
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah, I am. I'm getting emotional, yeah.
No, I love that.
Uh yeah, but
Not
like
that, but I love that you're feeling your
that you're crying, but
I don't
no.
cry.
Yeah, yeah. No, I've honestly the past 5 years, it's like something was lifted. I don't know what it is, but I've always had a very hard time showing my emotions and crying and talking about what hurts me because I always felt like it shouldn't be validated. Like it shouldn't be important why I'm upset. Huh?
Your emotions shouldn't be validated.
Yeah, 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 yeah. So I think like after a certain threshold, especially when my mom passed, after that, like I just stopped giving a shit about everything. And I started putting myself ahead of other things. Before I would be like, of course, come on, shit on me, no problem. I'll
People,
just, yeah, people pleasing, like, no problem. Like, of course, of course. And now it's like I learned healthier boundaries.
I'm
I
so,
learned,
and I'm sorry to interrupt you, but you said, yeah, go ahead and shit on me. And I'm just thinking of one of
Mhm.
your stories. So that'll be on another podcast.
Yes. Well, okay. To be clear, no one shat on me. Just FYI, not physically. Just they shat themselves on a date. Yeah, we need to do dating horror stories part two. Um,
Anyway,
because
your
well, yeah, we'll get there. But yeah, I feel like now I became a lot more open. I'm more of an open book in a sense of I release my emotions. I prioritize my emotions in many senses. So if I feel something being wronged, I'm not gonna sit and wait for that person to realize it. I'm gonna tell them. I think it's important too because I don't know what the person is thinking at the time, right? So right? So it's just I used to take a back seat, but I don't do that anymore. And I noticed that about me, and I'm happy that I've noticed that. But I also wish I started it sooner
okay, so
because
question for you on that then.
mhm,
You bring up a really important point because I used to be really emotional when I was young. And I would be told, don't cry or stop being a baby or, whatever.
mm,
I feel like this happens a lot to kids where, and especially boys, where
yeah.
they're like, stop crying or don't be a baby or whatever. And so when we get older, we kind of like close ourselves off for a while until we get to this point where you and I are, where we're like, no, it's okay for me to feel my emotions. It's okay for me to cry. It's okay. And so I wonder, because that happened to me, I wonder if you were kind of like, if your emotions were kind of suppressed when you were younger, and now you've kind of
It,
opened up.
it wasn't suppressed. It was just there was always somebody who was a much bigger drama queen than me in my life. I can't explain it another way. I was always a person who was like the voice of reason in a friend group, like let's say, right? In a friend group, I was always the one, oh, suck it up, buttercup. Relax. It's gonna be okay. Like I was that person. And
By the way,
me.
guys, you guys said that to me at times. Just
But you know what I mean? Like it's kind of like my role, the expectations that were coming out of me as I was.
but hear that. But listen. So those are the expectations that were expected of you. So then, like, you took on that role, and it was like, well, I have to
Yep,
be the tough one.
yep,
you know
exactly.
and that was you before, and now you're like, wait a minute, the what I know now, what would you
Yeah,
say to yourself now?
to it's okay to cry. It's okay to not be okay
Yeah.
sometimes because like and everyone always used to say this to me. Tamara, why are you always smiling? Why are you so happy?
And were you?
I wasn't, but they thought I was because I never showed it. Every time, like my smile was always like a cover up.
Like a
Everything, yeah, yeah. It's like I could be going through some stuff, and especially you guys already know my full stories with
yeah.
all the bullshit that was going on, but it's just no matter what, I was still the happiest person. I was still the smiley person. I was still running around, cheering everybody on, making everybody happy. It's like, the Robin Williams syndrome, kind of, I'm gonna
Yeah,
say.
Oh, that's sad, actually. Yeah.
Right. It's like the Robin Williams syndrome because you don't know. They're so funny, these comics. They're always so happy. They're always telling all these funny stories. How could they have a day of misery? How is that even possible?
No.
Right? So it kind of really got to me at a point, and I think the pivot actually happened in social work school when we were doing child psychology, trauma, all these other topics that we really discussed in full and really studied at that point. And it just started hitting me that this is not me. This is my trauma.
Hmm.
This is all these things. So yeah, I love to say I would love to have known this when I was younger, when I was going through certain things, when I allowed certain things to be done to me
Yeah.
because I didn't think I deserved better, but like it's so important that I know that now. If I was to be able to educate myself, yeah, I would have been, I'm going to say, mentally healthier, I guess, earlier on. But then again, was my brain, what was I emotionally ready to accept that this is why? We need those experiences, right?
So that's a really important point for our podcast listeners to understand. Like, we need to be emotionally ready to be able to accept certain things. The other thing that you stated, that I know that we're in the future we're going to cover intergenerational trauma, but I just took a continuing education class on generational trauma,
Hmm.
ethics and all that, right? But you stated, like, that trauma wasn't me. And I really wanted to kind of like touch upon that a little bit, as far, and
Yeah.
I know your childhood story and family members. We all, anyone listening, everybody has some sort of generational trauma within their genes, right? That's the thing that I've been working on with a lot of my patients, actually. I'm like, this isn't you. Some of it might be acute, but the
Hmm.
reactions, that anxiety, I have a patient that's constantly like, why am I so anxious? Why? And you hear her history and you're like, well, this isn't yours. This is your father's and his father or mother, and
Hmm.
it goes into the ancestry, right? And
Hmm.
so I love that you stated that, because in how we make our decisions, a lot of times the decisions that we make in the past, and we're like, why did I do that? It's out of fear, it's out of anxiety, it's out of like not knowing
Yeah.
that unknown. And so yeah, we make wrong decisions in life. We marry the wrong person, or people may fall into drugs, or everything is reversible, though, thankfully. But it takes that work, you
Yep.
know, and
You
it's
have to want to. You have to want to.
want to, and to point out what you said, you have to be emotionally ready. Now, it's fine to sit there and be like, okay, I want to change, and I know I can do this. And it's fine to have that fear behind it, because something I tell all my patients, people that really do therapy, like really engage in it, are the most courageous people, because it's not a quick fix.
No.
It's touching into some pretty traumatic stuff. It's being consistent on the homework or the therapeutic process, and saying, you know what, I'm going to fall and get up again, fall and get up again. It's like, what I didn't do before then, now I'm
Yeah.
relearning.
And it's also accountability. You're taking accountability for your own mistakes when you're in therapy because I mean, your mind, it could be a scary place. And
Yeah.
to go deep in there and dive in there and relive certain experiences and open up these Pandora's boxes of things that you've tucked in those crevices so deeply that you made sure that you will never remember again, right? And going back into that.
Well, that's
And
what conscious and unconscious does, right? It's like,
of
hey,
course,
and
of course.
I'm sure you've experienced this a lot with patients. I like to do a lot of psychodynamic work. So
Hmm.
I'll in and out when I feel like they're ready, right, by asking questions. And it is pretty fascinating to see how people come in and go, oh my God, I completely forgot this memory. And it'll
Yep.
pop up as they're opening up. I don't know. I think I love the work that we do. I think it's fascinating. I mean,
It's fascinating. Yeah,
it's us
absolutely.
too, wouldn't you think? Like, that self
Yeah.
come in.
No, I feel like I'm also healing with my patients because I'm learning so much from them. I'm learning so much about the human brain and how it reacts. So it's
Uh,
one thing to read it in theory when you're in a classroom, and it's another thing when you were observing it in practice and
100%.
seeing all this happening in front of you, and you're seeing the change.
Hmm.
And it's not even that, like, a lot of the times you will see the change in the way the person looks. And I
Oh,
don't mean
yeah, absolutely.
just their look, like the way they look into your eyes. It's like a different human being. You see it changing and evolving because now they're more aware. They are open, they're processing, they're understanding. So one of the I'm gonna say one of the most beneficial things that I've done with my patients when it comes to uncovering certain things, it's actually what I know now that I didn't know then, is we do have this exercise where we will write a letter
Mm,
to our 15-year-old self or whatever old they are, 20-year-old self, let's say 20 years ago, like, because that's what I brought up. Remember, 20 years from now, what would
yeah.
what would you say to Shanae? So we usually do that exercise, and I do encourage that they read it out loud. And we depict certain things that happened and how this has empowered them to be who they are, right? Because if even in their moments of darkness, they're repeating certain behaviors, understanding why they're repeating the behaviors until they start unpacking and explaining.
Yeah.
And this exercise has really been beneficial in a lot of my sessions because they started to see little patterns. They're starting to see little behaviors that they now understand where they're stemming from,
Hmm.
and facing that head on and kind of seeing that darkness
Yeah.
that they've tried to cover so badly with makeup and patches and
Yeah.
band-aids and whatever,
It never
not
goes.
take it. It never goes away until you face it. It never goes away. Because once you are ready, once you are strong enough emotionally to say, hey, this shit, this happened to me. And it was horrible. And I hated every minute of it. And I never want to relive it again. And I am going to do this and this and this, not to have my children relive this, not to have my grandkids experience stuff like this. I'm going to educate them on it. And I'm going to face it head
That's
on.
called the cycle breaker.
Yep.
And so I feel I'd love your thoughts on this, but I've been doing, I mean, with all of my patients, generational trauma has come into probably all of them. And I think because the mental health industry is less stigmatized, that's a word. I think people are more aware that it's safe to be able to, like, have anxiety, depression, talk about it, and that you're not alone. I love the fact that mental health awareness is so much stronger now. I think this is why we're in a time where cycle breakers, like, we're all becoming cycle breakers because it's safe to be able to talk about the anxiety, the trauma, and not
Yeah.
be ostracized for it.
Yeah.
Ostracized?
Yeah. Ostracized.
And so I feel like we're in a really great time as professionals to be able to do some real change in these patients that are like, I'm ready.
Yeah. And the field is blooming. I'm sorry, booming, not blooming. Blooming too, but yeah, it's booming. Because there's opportunity for social work now incorporated into everything,
Every,
and
I mean, look at
everything.
when
The UN, exactly. United Nations, international social work, all these other opportunities that you have there.
everywhere.
And it's everywhere. And before it wasn't looked at. Like before, if somebody's having a mental health breakdown, a panic attack, an anxiety attack, they go to the emergency room, they look at you like you have two horns, they look at you like you, okay, get over it.
Actually,
But if you break your
I'm glad you brought that up because I had gone in my 20s. I had gone to the ER a couple times. I swore I was dying. I swore that I was having a heart attack.
Mhm.
And this is something I really want our listeners to, hear is that, like, those feelings are real and you
Yep,
really they are mirroring all of these other, like, scary scenarios, right? I
yep,
Okay, I mean, hopefully it's different now. That movie, Something's Gotta Give, with Jack Nicholson, kind of portrays a better perspective of it, where he's like, I swear I'm having a heart attack. This time it's real. Da, da, da. And she goes,
Mm-hmm.
diagnosis, but that doctor handled it really well. She's like, you get a hold of your life, and et cetera, et cetera. But in the past, again,
Yeah.
as I'm talking about how things were so stigmatized, I remember people like, oh my God, it was an anxiety attack. It was like not a, and like, here's Xanax, or here's, and I was like, but I don't want to take a pill. And so I think it's important for people to realize that these physical symptoms are real and they're scary, and to think that they are having something like, of course you feel that way. Of course you feel scared.
But the thing is, if you come in with a broken arm, they're going to give you service right away. They're going to put
Yeah,
you and give you that, they'll give you the MRI. They're going to give you medication. They're going to tell you when it's going to heal. They're going to tell you if you need surgery. They're going to give you a diagnosis. When you're coming in with mental health, they're like, oh, you're just having a panic attack. Relax.
right. It's just so like brushed off. And
It's really brushed off.
I really hope anyone listening, any medical health professional listening, to really take the time with the patient to kind of listen to them, what's going on, and have some compassion and empathy when addressing, like, hey, it sounds like you're having an anxiety attack or a panic attack, instead of saying, like,
Yep,
listen, I know that they're busy in the ER, but that is no excuse to like remove any empathy or compassion. I mean, we're still all humans at the end of the day.
exactly. Exactly. But the thing is with mental health, it could also be triggering to the people in the ER. You know what I mean? Like if someone's having this and you're in an ER, it could be triggering to them as well. But for that, you have specific departments. You have social workers. You have hospital social workers in the hospital, literally,
Right.
that are also at that point not responsive in a way that you would want them to respond because they're used to it. Every day they're getting this. And it's kind of like, oh, another one bites the dust. It's very sad, but this is where what we're dealing with right now, and that's part of the reason why social work field is booming, because people are constantly looking for that support outside of the hospital.
Yeah. And it's out there. The support is out there. But all right, well, circling back around, as we conclude, if I knew then what I know now, what would you conclude with?
I would conclude with any decision you make is the right one, because eventually, no matter what decision it is, it's going to make you who you are, and it's going to change your perspective of things. So if something is meant to be, it's going to be yours. That's how I concluded with. So it doesn't matter what you know now. At the end of the day, you got here somehow, right? You got here through that experience. So regretting things is a waste of time.
Yeah.
Um, you just have to allow yourself to experience these things because they build you up. That's all purpose. If you were so wise from day one, then you wouldn't enjoy life. Then you wouldn't enjoy the experiences that you get because you'd be like, oh, I've seen it already. Whatever, So at the end of the day, just enjoy every freaking day of your life and just look at everything with your newly formed lens that you get from your experiences.
Yeah.
So that one day when we're old and we're in our deathbed, we have something to look back on. If we didn't have these experiences, it's gonna be boring.
Yeah. I know.
You know, the things you're gonna tell your grandkids, it's you're gonna have very colorful stories for them. If you were able to go back and change everything, you'd be like, yeah, I lived a boring life. I just went here and here, and that's it. Right?
Yeah.
But now you have these experiences, you have this growth. That's the whole point. You can't teach somebody who's not ready.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I would mimic what you're saying. I would also just say that you have to address life in the same way that you said. Go out there, have fun. You're going to make mistakes. Choose to learn from those mistakes instead of saying, like, poor me, poor me. So I always like to say, like, stop playing the victim and act like the courageous survivor. All right, it happened. It is what it is. Next, please. And then just keep forging through life in that way because, like you said, all of these experiences create the person that you want to be. Do you want to be a strong person or do you want to be a weak person? Because you get to choose that,
Yep. Yep.
right?
Okay, guys. Well, thank you for joining us. Happy Tuesday, and just deal with it.
Bye.
Bye. Okay.